Hello, this is Tim Trelaw, and I play the third Doctor Who for Big Finish Productions. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
They all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the insane world of Doctor Who collecting, the collectors themselves, and all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise. And sometimes we just talk about Doctor Who. It's a great place to be to talk about it. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting Doctor Who now for 42 years. Welcome to our 60th episode. Very excited to reach this milestone. Celebrating 60 years of Doctor Who this year, of course, as well, and what a ride it's been. You might remember I opened one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago that exclusively served the Doctor Who fans. Back in 1984, I had this idea, when I was 15 years old in my parents' house in my bedroom one night, and I thought, I'm going to open a Doctor Who store and I'm going to call it Bundles from Britain. Well, lo and behold, it actually happened, and now we are mentioned in a history book, a great book called Red, White, and Who, The Story of Doctor Who in America. Bundles from Britain permanently lives on page 384, and you can find a link to buy this book on the front page of our website at drwhocollectors.com. We don't get anything for this book. We want you to have it. You can also find it anywhere you get your books. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network. You can find great Doctor Who podcasts at directionpoint.org. And if you happen to be a listener who hosts a podcast, join today. There's no cost or obligation. And join the ranks of Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, and in the top 10 of the great Doctor Who podcasts of 2022, Traveling the Vortex. So for more information, go to directionpoint.org. And speaking of links, I include this information in every episode of my podcast because you don't have to start at the beginning. You can start anywhere you like. These resources are excellent for collectors. First place you can go, and both absolutely free, by the way. Timelash.com, and under that heading, go to the TARDIS Library, and you can set up a free account to keep track of your media collection, your books, your vinyl, your Betamax, your CD collection, your Target books, your other books. And those are that's a free place to track, not only track your collectibles, create want lists, wish lists, maybe even find what you're looking for to convenient links on Amazon or eBay. What a great place to go to get your collection together. And we thank Mr. Dan O'Malley for putting that together and keeping it free. If you need to do some intense research on Doctor Who items, you want to find out if something exists or when it was made or how much it originally cost, then you need to go to Howe's Transcendental Toy Box at drwhotoybox.co.uk. Of course, Howe is in David J. Howe. David J. Howe is a great friend and one of the best resources for Doctor Who collectors, having had the largest collection in the UK. And if you're looking for great Doctor Who items at great prices, then you don't need to go any further than DoctorWhoStore.com. It's in the name. That is, of course, Alien Entertainment's website, and you have what you need. They're always running sales. And, of course, if you live in the Chicago or west suburbs, you can select free pickup from the Lombard location. And while you're there, browse the incredible selection of Doctor Who and science fiction items. And now you can also visit their location in Logan Square in Chicago. Visit alienentertainment.com for location and store hours. You can also find some great Doctor Who items for your collection at Forbidden Planet. They're one of our sponsors, and you don't need to go anywhere except to our website at drwhocollectors.com. Just select merchandise links, and you can do your shopping right there. We get a small portion of the sale. You don't pay any more. but you get the great items. They ship everywhere. They do ship to the United States. And don't forget, we also have our own eBay store. We have a lot of goodies on there, including several new hardcover books that are in mint condition. So if you need to look for those are not directly from the collection, but from extra copies that were found. So it's, we'll pass those along to you. We'll keep our bills paid. What a great way to go here. All those proceeds benefit the podcast. In addition, of course, on our website to all the podcasts that are produced from the very beginning to the present day, all 60 episodes are there. We have the complete guide to Doctor Who classic hardcover books. We list a lot of reprints and other things and other information, valuations as best we can. We don't just take the sold links on eBay, because that's not a great way to track what people actually buy for it, because it may be different in somewhere else. So we take a lot of different places that sell books, and we average those together to come up with an accurate and fair price. So check it out. Coming up soon here, we got Chicago TARDIS 2023. We've already got it going here. I know it's a long way off in November. It seems like a long way off. November will be here before you know it. And of course, this is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who with the best convention in the Midwest. So you need to get on the email list here at chicagotardis.com, because they will be making the first guest announcements any day now. And we're doing this podcast in the third week of January, almost the fourth week of January now. So they're going to be coming out with that information very, very soon. You don't want to miss this. I'm just going to make a guess out there. I'm sure Fraser Hines will be there, because I think he comes with every ticket to your convention. I think it's in his contract. So I think you will see him there, and you can't miss him. If you've met him before, you got to see him again. He's a great, by the way, remembers people he meets all over the place, and he's very personable, a very nice man. So you don't want to miss that. They'll also have hotel reservations opening up soon, and the hotels do fill up fast. So don't miss that. What's going on with me? Well, this is an exciting year for me as a Doctor Who presenter at various places. I have been confirmed to be returning to Consinity 2023. That's the Gathering of the Geeks at Dirks Hall at the Milwaukee School of Engineering University. That is set for April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can find out more. There'll be links and information of that on my website. My special thanks, of course, to Nick Seidler for the invitation. He is one of the people running Chicago TARDIS, and he also helps run this wonderful convention in Milwaukee. Got to get up there. I will also be presenting a virtual session on Doctor Who games at Oricon 23. That's a convention that is held in Oregon. A little far for me to get to with the museum, but I'm good friends with some of the promoters there, and we're going to do a virtual thing there. I have just recently been confirmed to be a returning guest to Doctoberfest 2023, which will be an in-person convention. Other guests will be announced soon. I'm looking forward to being amongst other guests. It'll be kind of fun to do that. I will be presenting the Doctor Who Collector Showcase and Traveling Museum. In addition to that, you can check out an even more wild museum experience at the Who Shop in the Who North America, the Who Shop of Who North America, as I like to call it. They have an amazing collection. Of course, I was very tickled last year when I was presenting, and he noted that my Dennis Fisher Cyberman had a box. He's got 3 Cybermen, but no box. So it's nice to know I've got something they don't have. So that's really cool. And also going far future here, I am going to be confirmed here as a guest at the Twin Cities Console Room Convention in 2024. That's in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. I will be doing, of course, the same thing. I'll be bringing the Traveling Museum up there to do some things as well. It's a very exciting convention. They usually get some great guests. I know this year Sophie Aldred was there, so that'll be a lot of fun. All right, what's new in the collection? I've got a lot of things en route, but I don't want to talk about them till they get here. I just want to make sure they get here because I've had things lost. I was supposed to get a homemade hardcover edition of City of Death that somebody had made, but it got lost in shipping, and so I've never seen it. But here is what has been obtained. I've got a slightly broken Dennis Fisher giant robot. I did repair the detached leg, but I'm missing a claw and the shoulder pieces and, of course, no box. So I'll be looking around for those. I did get an amazing collection of hardcover books. I had to buy them as a bundle, but it included 2 titles I was missing. First was Frontios in mint condition. All these books were in mint condition, by the way. And a copy of Doctor Who and the Smugglers. Now, You might think, what's so special about that? Well, in hardcover world, that is the final hardcover that W.H. Allen produced. Only 1,000 were printed, making it one of the most hard-to-find books in any condition. Ex-library copies have been going for $500. There's a new copy going for $750 online. And when I averaged out all of these books together, I roughly paid $39.50 for it. So I'm pretty excited about that. The other books that we got are being sold on our eBay store for very reasonable prices. We're not marking them up crazy. We want to, we'll get our investment back plus a little bit to pay the bills. I think that's fair. So there you go. Anyway, keep looking. Deals do happen. Every once in a while, things pop up, and once in a while, I get a pretty good offer. That happens quite a bit. So it's a very exciting thing. All right. In other news here, looks like I need proof of life. The classic hardcovers, and this is the best episode to talk about it because we'll be going into that a little bit later. There has been a rumor of news of a copy of Doctor Who and the Space War, third impression, that has been circulating around social media. I have no evidence in any of my sources to suggest that one was published. The person that said they had one and then traded it for a first edition is kind of suspect to me. I don't think that sounds right, but why would you do that? But then again, maybe you didn't think that the third edition would have a lesser print run and would also be extremely valuable, even more so than a first edition. A first edition might have had 3,500 copies, making it pretty hard to find, although some of those are hard to find in new condition. The second editions have fewer print runs, and the third edition would have even fewer. So that's something to suggest. The rumor says that it was published in 1978, but I have a problem with that. The second printing of Space War was released in January of 1979 on the W.H. Allen Longbow label. So that would put it back a year, still with W.H. Allen Longbow, but it would be out before the second printing. So a third printing would have been a W.H. Allen release after 1979. So I don't see any evidence of any of those Wingate titles coming out after 1979. So there is a discrepancy here. But if you're out there listening and you've got Space War on your shelf, please check your books. If you happen to see a copy of this alleged third impression, and it would say third impression. It won't say third edition. It won't say third printing. It'll actually say second impression, and then followed by underneath it, it'll say third impression. Only one hardcover book has ever been proved to have a third impression, and that's Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster. And the reason I can absolutely say that with certainty is I have a copy on my shelf, and I've put photos of it out there. It has that exact wording on the inside page. It'll say first published in this year, then it says second impression this year, and then third impression. Usually that's how they do it. But that's the only book I've ever seen in a third impression. So I'm of course, looking at all of the information. I want to check I checked the Chris Stone guide. It does not list a third printing. The McSmith online guide based on the popular TV series, I want to get his name correct. It's Paul McSmith, edited. The fourth edition. I'm going to have to see if he's got a fifth edition. Maybe it has additional information. And so far, my requests there say, well, somebody said I had a friend who thinks he had one. Well, that's not really proof. So I need to figure out, just for our database, and of course for collectors out there who are looking to complete their, think they may have a complete collection of hardcovers, but they're missing this third edition. That might cause a little bit of stir out there. I mean, it's amazing. I know it's just Doctor Who stuff, right? But no, this is a serious thing for people. And I'm here to educate. I'm here to help. And if there is one out there, we should try to find it. All right. And of course, I love talking with collectors. It's what I do. Share your story here as a guest host. Contact me for details here, Doctor Who Collectors Podcast at gmail.com. And we can share your story. I've got a collector coming up. John Kolchak Pertwee will be on the program. I'll be interested to know because that is his name. And he will talk about his name change and what his life is about and all that. I'm looking forward to that. So there we go. On today's show, we do continue our coverage. Speaking of classic hardcovers, we are continuing our coverage of that today with the year 1981. And my guest is Professor Tony Whitt, who hosts the Doctor Who Target Book Club. Coming up on future episodes here, this is a very exciting calendar for me. This year has been very fruitful. I will be talking with John Walsh, author of a new book called Doctor Who and the Daleks: The Official Guide to the Films. The book has been has a reprint already, and those books are now available in the United States on Amazon.com. They're wonderful books. John is a wonderful guy, and I can't wait to share my conversation with him. If you're a fan of the Peter Cushing films, that will be a must listen. Also on the calendar, I will be talking with actor Tim Traylor, who voices the Third Doctor for Big Finish, as well as quite a credit of TV appearances and new things that are coming out. Just a wonderful guy. I really enjoyed meeting him at Chicago TARDIS, and I think you'll enjoy that conversation as well. And you need to stay tuned here because I will have one of the first podcast interviews with the amazing Tasha Achilleos. She is the widow of Chris Achilleos, and I will be asking her a lot of questions about the future of Chris's artwork and her involvement in Doctor Who. And I sure hope that she does conventions because I would love to meet her. So check that one out. That will be a very good conversation that, because I've been friends with Tasha for over a year. She invited me to attend Chris's funeral virtually. Not everybody got that invitation, but I watched the funeral live, and it was extremely moving. It's the first time I'd ever seen a Dalek honor guard, and it was very moving. It was just, and of course we had Chris booked on this podcast for last February, and sadly we lost him in December of the previous 2 months. Just really sad. So, but tune in for that. Lots happening here. Also, my last episode, my interview with Mr. Peter Purvis, is now my most popular download, and of course, it's the one that FeedSpot didn't feature. Well, their loss. That's okay. I want to thank our patrons out there. If you want to see exclusive material, including the video interview of my talks with, Mr. Peter Purvis, or the hardcovers that we show here, or Mr. Tim Traylor, or anybody who, I've talked to in the past, Sadie Miller, Lauren Cornelius, you can find those on our Patreon page at the $15 level, and that will help us keep our bills paid for the virtual year. So all you need to do is go to patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast all together, and you can support us there. You can also subscribe to us at Podbean, that's drwhocollectors.podbean.com, and click the Become a Patron button to support us at any level. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines. Also appearing on the track, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin on guitar. Who'd have thought? You can hear this podcast, of course, anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Podbean. You can find this anywhere you get your podcasts. We are a Direction Point Network podcast. Learn more at directionpoint.org. Coming up, we've got our main story with Professor Tony Whitt and the hardcovers of 1981. And the most outrageous offer. So we're going to be right back after these wonderful words from these Direction Point podcasts. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dix, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Are you ready to travel through time with us? Then check out Traveling the Vortex, a Doctor Who podcast. For nearly 7 years and more than 500 episodes, we've traveled from one end of the vortex to the other, making different stops with different doctors, reviewing everything from TV stories to audio plays, from books to comics, and more. Sean, Keith, and Glenn take you on a journey through 50-plus years of Doctor Who episodes and spin-off materials. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to check us out. And now, we're a proud member of Direction Point, a Doctor Who podcast network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
Now it's time for our main story. This is a continuation of our coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers that we've done now for a few episodes. We've so far covered 1974 through 1980 with the imprints of Universal Tandem, which were Alan Wingate, Longbow, and W.H. Allen. We start this episode in 1981, where the W.H. Allen imprint is used exclusively. It is not a very robust year, but averaging less than one per month, so a total of 11 hardcovers published, with 10 new hardcover publications, but mostly reprints of paperbacks due to the writer's strike that is in full force in this year, which fully impacts W.H. Allen's publishing. Compared with the Target books, which only had 6 titles published this year. A brief history again. In 1975, in case you're starting with this podcast, Universal Tandem was sold by UPD to the British conglomerate Howard and Wyndham, and the company was renamed Tandem Publishing Limited before being merged with the paperback imprints of Howard and Wyndham's general publishing house, W.H. Allen, to become Wyndham Publications Limited in 1976. Of course, in the following 2 years, the Wyndham identity was completely phased out. The Tandem imprint disappeared last year in 1980. And surviving titles from the backlist were reprinted under W.H. Allen's principal paperback imprint, Star Books. The Target book imprint survives until 1993, though its later years are completely exclusive to Doctor Who novelizations. The Alan Wingate imprint was forever retired at the end of 1977. Longbow was also retired at the end of 1978, and the W.H. Allen imprint is used until the run ends in 1988. Of course, anytime, of course, I invoke Doctor Who novelizations, we are required, of course, by the order of the former companion support group, and it took 14 ballots to basically elect Mr. Tony Whitt.
I'd like to think it took less than that.
I'm sorry. Ian was a holdout.
Of course.
But as we always try to keep current events in our podcast,
for better or for worse,
for whatever happens. But watching history, actually, I should say, not watching history unfold, but history slowly swirling the toilet bowl. But anyway, we're very happy to have Professor Tony Whitt on our program. He is the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. And welcome back to the show, Tony. And thank you for being on the 60th episode in time for the 60th anniversary season.
And thank you for having me and for comparing me to Kevin McCarthy. That was
not even
very unexpected.
Not even close. No, I would never do that to a friend.
No.
I mean, I know we're not supposed to be political on this podcast, but I'll say I watched this through basically neutral eyes, as I have a little bit of a background in political science, and I thought, I am watching a dumpster fire happening in progress, and I'm waiting for the next rap song to come out because they came out with a video montage of the House clerk saying, "Speaker has not been elected. A speaker has not been elected." Get ready for that. So,
it'll be more catchy than the theme to K9 and Company. That's for true.
Goodness, and I listened to your podcast on that. It was, it's an interesting story, and I actually have the 45 that you guys talked about.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I got it, and it's like I almost I think next time around, if John Leeson comes back, I'll have him sign that too. But that's the only disappointing thing is that on the cover of the 45 is just a picture of the dog. I said, "Where's Liz Sladen?"
Yeah. Well, that's not the only disappointing thing. I mean,
oh no, I know there's more, but
who could have thought that the musical genius of Ian Levine could let us down so much?
Well, I mean, the same people that like Jimmy Page and Fraser Hines with Who's Doctor Who. So,
well,
although
yeah,
that's
but I'd much
probably
rather listen
better.
to that.
That's
Yeah.
probably a little better. So, well, anyway, on to the matter at hand here. Because by the way, these hardcovers are extremely sought after today, and you might have to rent out part of your house and open up an Airbnb to afford them. They can be found in a couple different ways. You can find them in X-Library edition, which is pulled or stolen from a library, or a non-library edition, which is a retail store version or a publisher review copy or otherwise unmarked copy of the book. Many of these titles were the first to be distributed in the USA, but not until 1985, and that would be me. So there we go. Tony, any memories of 1981 that come back to you?
Oh my goodness, you're really putting me on the spot here. In 1981, I know we were still getting over the election from the previous year, so that was still happening.
First full year of the Reagan era, yeah.
Yeah, and would I have entered middle school by that point? Possibly. Oh God! If that's the case, then I do have memories of it, and I'd rather not go back there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's. I'm also in middle school at that point, so that's. I certainly get that. But anyway, let's tell our listeners here what happened in Doctor Who in 1981, because it was an exciting year. And in March of 1981, the NATPE exhibit in New York, Time Life Television promotes its latest syndication package, which includes 74 brand new episodes of Doctor Who, seasons 16 to 18, the latter of which had not yet concluded on British television. And this was really exciting. Two of the first stations to buy this package were KRMA in Denver, Colorado, and OETA in Oklahoma. They started screening them in May of 1981. However, this promotion is short-lived because Time Life's 10-year contract with the BBC expired in April of 1981. So 1 month later, somebody forgot to pay the phone bill, and it was not renewed. So that's really a shame. The two of the first stations to buy this package, by the way, I already mentioned that. I have that twice. I'm sorry, folks. That's how things go in the podcast sometimes. Anyway, going forward here in June of 1981, and by the way, just for the viewers out there, this was the pamphlet that came out for the brand new package of Tom Baker episodes, and you'll notice, Tony, this is the Chris Achilleos artwork here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and inside they list all the episodes from Robot to Legopolis with the exact wordage that TV guides used all across the country. So that was nice that they did that. And this was from Lionheart Television. So that was the new distributor that replaced Time Life Books. And of course, you can see that the cover was taken directly from the second monster book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So there we go. In June of 1981, the fourth and final issue of Marvel Premiere featuring Doctor Who, and that would be this issue right here, hit the stands there, and the reprints, of course, come out in a couple of years. Just to remind everyone, they did 4 of those in the previous year. They did Marvel Premiere featuring Doctor Who. They had to rename the title because City of the Damned was rejected by the Comic Code Authority, and so it's it's basically the Cursed, I guess they changed it to.
Yeah.
And then that's the next one. These were actually very nicely drawn, and you'll see these come
Especially
out again.
that one.
Yeah, this is a good one too. I love that one. I've had those for many years. In July of 1981, this was exciting. The very first issue of Fantasy Empire magazine comes out by New Media Publishing. Magazine contains news and features of all manner of British television. Doctor Who gets extensive coverage, as you can see by the cover of the 5 Faces of Doctor Who. New Media Press will publish 19 regular issues plus various specials and compilation issues between 81 and 85. And one small note of worth here, the editor of this magazine was John Peel.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. In July of 1981, Pinnacle Books ceased publishing all reprints of their Doctor Who title. It's not clear if whether or not their license had expired or the sales were just at a point where they didn't consider to continue it. The North American edition of the fanzine Celestial Toy Room reports that Lionheart has sold its first 98 episodes to a bunch of stations. I'm not going to list them all, but the ones you might recognize include WTTW Chicago and WOR in, I believe that's Atlanta. So the full package, of course, we took the bonus package. We got all 172 episodes here in Chicago, so that was really exciting. The magazine that announced basically that WHYY was one of the first stations to air the full-length movie format editions. WTTW was still showing the half-hour editions in 1981. In August of 81, before he ever appeared on screen as the Doctor, Peter Davison makes his first U.S. convention appearance in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Joining him is John Nathan Turner. Interviews were both published in Fantastic Films magazine, issue 28. In September of 81, even though the first season of Peter Davison's stories haven't even screened yet, those 7 serials are offered in advance to the U.S. cable station, the Entertainment Channel. I don't know if you remember that channel, Tony.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
However, for reasons that are not clear, the Entertainment Channel deal never went ahead. If it had, that would have meant that those Davison episodes would have first appeared here in the United States ahead of the UK screening. That would have been something. And of course, late in that, I believe November of 81, the Doctor Who Fan Club of America is launched in Denver, Colorado. I was a member of that group for many years. I don't know. Did you ever join that one?
I was supposed to be. That was one of the, in 1983, as part of the Five Doctors pledge drive, my particular PBS station offered that as one of the premiums. And somehow I got the membership card, but never got the membership package.
They probably had a miscommunication between the TV station and the club, probably.
I think so.
That's a shame. It's a great group, and I remember they were featured in many documentaries over the years, and of course, then the big branch in Chicago that opened up a couple years later was I'm trying to think of it here, the Friends of Doctor Who, and that was a big one here. It also went bust pretty fast too. So a lot of the fan clubs kind of grew in the early 80s, and then by the end of the 80s, they all kind of died away. So that's kind of how 81 landed with that. So going to the books here in 1981, all the Doctor Who hardcovers will be W.H. Allen hardcovers with printed laminated covers. And of course, I have all but one, and one I will probably never have. It is extremely rare, and it never got sent to the United States. But I do have an update, though. As of today, I have a complete set of 1980 hardcovers. Nightmare of Eden has been located.
Oh, awesome.
And at least the last place I looked, of course, was DoctorWhoStore.com. Alien Entertainment had a copy.
Oh, wow.
So and a mint copy, too. So it was really, really nice. So I got that. I'll be picking that up from the store sometime this week. So 1980, I can check off the list, but that's the only year I have complete now. But this year, and I'll do a little spoiler alert here. The one I can't get is An Unearthly Child. And when we get to that point, I'll explain why. So we start in January of 1981 with the book Doctor Who and the Creature from the Pit by David Fisher. The cover is by Steve Kite. Now, you'll note the cover, and those of you watching this will see the image of Tom Baker here. And the reference for this photo is a publicity photo that Tom did with some Daleks outside of BBC headquarters.
Yes, that looks familiar.
So I had to look that up. I thought I had that actual photo in my collection, but I don't. It was one of the big sellers back in the day. The original painting of this book is owned by Jeremy Skinner, who often displays it at many conventions in the UK. So you may have, if you're a UK listener, and I've got quite a few out there. So, cheerio to all you folks out there. You might see this painting at a convention near you. 3,250 copies were printed, and this book had a price of £4.25, which was a significant price increase only 8 months after the last price hike. It will, of course, increase again before the end of the year. That price in today's dollars, by the way, would be $28.18.
Mm.
This book was sold in the USA and is not very hard to find in either library or non-library conditions. The price that we sold it here in the United States was $15, and I believe we sold out of those books. I remember specifically a lot of these books just flew off the table very quickly. You can expect to pay about $100 to $150 for a book like this. I wouldn't pay more than that because there are a lot of them out there. A little bit less for the ex-library copy. So how did the Target Book Club fare on this story?
That was episode 113 of the podcast. And Dalton gave it a strong 3. Allison gave it a 2.5, which for her is quite high.
That's pretty high for Allison, yeah.
But she also cheated a bit because she listened to the audio book that read by Tom Baker, which is, as she put it, a very different experience.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
Yep. And I gave it a 3.5, and that half point is because Fisher was trying way too hard with this book to prove that he was Douglas Adams and not Terrence Dix.
Yes.
Yeah, so he tries just a little too hard with it. It's not as good as his later books.
And then one more note, too, in the television serial, we had a special guest appearance by Doctor Who companion Jacqueline Hill, who appeared in the episode, and I think I'm right with that.
You're thinking of Meglos, right?
Oh, no. I think she was in Creature from the Pit.
No,
not
she was in Meglos.
Meglos. Oh, I'm sorry. I am confusing the two.
However, there was a notable guest star in that episode. In fact, there are 2.
Oh, okay.
One of them is, what is the name of the character? But the older woman in that appeared in the very first episode, An Unearthly Child.
Oh, yes.
Actually, she appeared in the second episode from then on, but yeah,
right.
There we go. And the other one was the actor who actually auditioned for the first Doctor, but didn't get it. And I'm blanking out on their names right now, but he played Organon.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I apologize to my listeners. That we record these at the end of the day, and both of us are teachers for our living. So
it's been a long day.
It's been a long day. So stick to the script, Larry. Okay. So there we go. Next, okay, we go to February here, where we have Doctor Who and the Terror of the Autons by Terrence Dix, with the cover by Alan Hood, which is the same cover that they used for the Target reprint. About 2,500 copies were printed, less than last month. This book was not part of U.S. distribution. Very hard to find, and that's part of the reason why An Unearthly Child was hard to find. It had a much lower print run. This copy also has the illustrations in it by Alan Willow. They just basically reprinted the entire Target book. It suggests that they just used Target book plates for this book. This book was actually in preparation for 6 months, even though the plates were already prepared. According to an article in the October 79 issue of Superstar Heroes magazine, Pinnacle was going to publish this title in 1980, but lost the rights when Lyle Stewart was granted U.S. distribution rights for Target and W.H. Allen. However, Target editions of Pinnacle books were not available in the United States until 1985. And the reason I know that is that we have a special little section in the Bundles from Britain catalog from 86 that said Target novelizations of Pinnacle books now available. And I remember that being a thing because we were confused why we couldn't get, let's say, Day of the Daleks or the Loch Ness Monster. And they said, oh, we can't ship those to the United States. We have there's a block on those. But then in 85, they said, oh yeah, we could sell those now. So I think it had to do with the deal with Pinnacle. So that's an interesting thing. So that's something, again, the Bundles catalog. And just to explain to the listeners too, the reason why that you're going to see a bunch of these titles come through in the next few books that were already paperback that became hardcover with the same cover, because there was a writer's strike in full force at this point. So they had to use material that was already prepared. They could not get new material. Terrence Dix, unfortunately, also part of this writer's strike. So he could not write a new book, which was really sad. That explains why there were only 6 Target books that year. Anyway, this book can go for about $300 or more. So this goes back a little ways for you, but what was the verdict on Terror of the Autons?
It goes back to episode 54. Dalton gave it a 4. Allison gave it a 3.5. She actually said that she was tossing cats and babies in the air on this one and proclaimed it one of the better dicks we've ever had, which, of course, caused merriment. And I also gave it a 4. Across the board, we were impressed with this book, mainly because this was back when Terrence Dicks still cared.
Yes. Yeah, he was fully on. This is one of the books I enjoy. I actually enjoyed the TV episode. I got to see it when I was really young. It was part of the Pertwee package that we got, and I'll never forget the guys with the big heads handing out daffodils. That was that was a lot of fun. In March, we get Doctor Who and the Enemy of the World by Ian Marter with a cover by Bill Donahue. 3,500 copies were printed, but again, the remaining inventory for this book came to the USA in 1985. Bundles sold this book for $17, and they all sold out. David Whittaker was actually working on this book before his death in February of 1980, and Ian Marter took over. And other notable things, this is the first time the word bastard appears in a Doctor Who novel. Steve Kite was supposed to be the original artist for the Whittaker book, but for unknown reasons, this cover was chosen instead. It is also the last, the Target version of this book will be the last Target book to use the Lodge or Diamond logo on the book, even though it goes back and forth with the hardcovers for a bit because of that writer's strike, and they didn't bother to change the covers either. They just kept the cover. So you'll see one go to the neon logo and go back to the diamond logo. So it's not consistent with the hardbacks, but this was the final Target to use it. My copy is the copy I had from 1985. It is still a mint clean copy that we had. It does not bear the Lyle Stewart sticker on the back. I don't know if I don't see it evidence that it was there. Some of them came without it, but it does have the £4.25 price on the back. The price of this book has been going for about $300 or more, depending on condition. Alien Entertainment, by the way, right now, if you want to get a copy of this book in mint condition, they've got one at DoctorWhoStore.com for $375. So he's got a few of these left. This also goes a little further back for you, Tony. So
just a bit.
What was the rating on this one?
This is episode 39, and Dalton and I were alone on this one for some reason, because I don't know if Allison couldn't join us or what, but he gave it a 2, saying that Marter's writing can't save this one. In fact, up to that date, I think that was the lowest book he had ever rated. Wow. And I gave it a 1. I absolutely hate this book, to be honest.
Okay.
Mainly because I honestly did not know that Whittaker started it and Marter finished it. It feels like Marter may have chucked most of Whittaker's manuscript because it's definitely a Marter book, but it's not Marter at his best.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's a shame that if Whittaker had finished this book, that might have made a huge difference in the story, I'm sure, because this is actually one I've never read, but I did of course, this is one of the stories that was recovered, so I did watch it when it was fully recovered from wherever they got it from, and it's an interesting story, and it shows Patrick Troughton playing a brilliant dual role in that, and of course Frasier is also very good in this one. So I thought it was a pretty good TV story, but of course, as you just heard, the book not so much. And and my guess is, of course, I'm finding a lot of this new information I'm getting from some new sources, and this makes sense. Actually, there's some corroboration to this too. That if Ian Marter took a lot of David Whittaker's material and tried maybe to use it, and it wasn't his true book, or maybe he wasn't, fully into it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think if Ian Marter had been given the script with no material at all, he might have done it. But it also is a very odd story for Ian Marter to be adapting. It's much more the sort of thing that Terrence Dicks would have done a good job with.
Yeah. And again, with the writer's strike, that was not an option. So, this is going to be a rough year, I think. Next, we go to April, and we get Doctor Who and the Green Death by Malcolm Hulke, with the cover again by Alan Hood. The illustrations are still in this book, also done by Alan Willow. And by the way, the only book that Malcolm Hulke does that's not based on one of his own scripts. And the reason by the way, I said again, the reason we're getting a lot of these older books is the writer's strike that affected all new publications. 2,750 copies of this were printed, just like the last title. The remaining inventory was sold to me in 1985, and we sold it for $15. They sold out very quickly. I didn't get a copy back then, so I've got an ex-library copy here. It's actually not a bad copy here. It's in really good shape with just a sold stamp on the inside front cover. Right now, you can actually get a mint copy of this book if you want to do that at drwhostore.com for $275. So these books are available. And on the back here, they actually list the books that were available at the time. Just going through this list here: Armageddon Factor, Curse of Peladon, Keys of Marinus, Nightmare of Eden, Horns of Naimon, Monster of Peladon, Creature from the Pit, and Terror of the Auton. So pretty much up to Enemy of the World on the back of the book. Again, also Joe Grant's final story. She leaves to get married to Stuart in this story. It's a sad story for that. Katie Manning always talks about this as one of her favorite stories, even though it was her last one. There was a lot going on in this story, and she had a big plot point. So that was a big deal for her. Tony, what was the club's verdict on this one?
Episode 68 was where we looked at this one. We were all impressed with it, though. Dalton gave it a 4. Allison gave it another 3.5, so she was on a roll at that point. I gave it a 4.25. The biggest problem that we had with it was the ending, because I don't know what it is with Malcolm Hulke, but it's true of the next book we're going to look at as well. For some reason, he didn't quite stick the landing. And that beautiful ending that we get on screen with Joe at the announcement party and the doctor leaving on his own. Yeah. It's handled in 2 pages.
Yes. And I know, I just looked at that. I'm like, yeah, there it is. And
it's very abrupt.
And he got into Bessie and drove away.
Yep, that's it.
I'm missing the word, just the words, the end.
Yes, exactly.
The end. That's it. Yeah, it's maybe he just wasn't, again, maybe not so much into it, because the script for Terrence Dicks was not a lot. You don't see a lot of Terrence Dicks this year except for reprints, but he wasn't available or couldn't do it or wasn't able to because of the strike. And of course they include all the original illustrations are in here from the original target plates. So it's an interesting thing, because most of the previous year there were no illustrations in the book. So they kind of were going away from that, and then now we're going backwards to old plates because we got to get a book out. Even though the sales weren't very good, based on, when I look back now on the number of copies we got in 85, and it was a lot of copies that did not sell. So it's a shame there. Of course, in May, we get 2 books that don't require a review, because the 2 books that came out were Doctor Who and the Program Guide, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And we get them by Jean-Marc Lossifier and Barry Letts. And the beautiful cover is here by Bill Donohue of the 5 Doctors there. This, of course, putting these books out at this time has everything to do with the writer's strike, because there was no novel here. So there was no, this was a new copy. New Target books were issued at the same time. And 2 book club editions were also put out. I cannot find any leads on those book club editions. Not sure if they ever even got printed, but they were supposed to be for the AFC book club in Britain. They did both of these books in hardcover, but not sure if they did the Allen copies or they did new copies. So far, I've got no leads on that. These were the first detailed guides to the series that go beyond. Which contained in the Radio Times 10th anniversary special. I meant to pull that one to show everybody, but you'll have to just take my word for it. I do have it, but former producer and writer Barry Letts provides a foreword to both volumes, and the later edition in 1989 replaces it with a new foreword by John Nathan Turner. The 94 edition reprint has no foreword, and I'm not sure why they did hardcover editions of these. I think they were just filling up the month. The cover art, of course, was reused for the Target book gift sets. So those were nice. These hardcovers, by the way, can be had for $20. I bought this one off Amazon for $20.
Wow.
I got it today. It actually has, it's not something I was missing. I've got my other copy here that I've had since 1985, but I thought, I'm going to go ahead and buy this. If it's $20 and it's the hardcover, it is a mint condition hardcover of this book, $20. So there we go. I wouldn't pay more than $20 for these. I mean, for one thing, all the information here is outdated and completely, it ends at a certain point. I mean, the stories, I think, only go through the first season of Peter Davison, maybe the second. In fact, no, actually, they go through Legopolis. So so they didn't even bother to go through the 80s. Yeah, they show him on the cover, but he isn't in the book. But it's really interesting how that happened. Did you ever own any of these in paperback or no? I never actually bothered with those. Even when I had a much more full collection before Katrina, I never bothered with the program guides or any of the extras stuff. Yes. Yeah, and I actually think I remember covering those in the Unusual Target episode we did a while back. But what's interesting is that we had these at Bundles from Britain. We had both of these. We had tons of these. And I remember looking at these going, we can't price these at the same level. So Gene and I decided to put them out at $12. And so they sold. Like, the people bought them because, well, for one thing, they hadn't seen these before. They hadn't seen hardcover editions. So that was like, look, new, fancy, shiny. I want that. That was the idea. And of course we were just grinning ear to ear because, that was a $20,000 weekend in 85. So, I mean, that was a beautiful thing. I was 16 years old. I'd never seen that much money in my life. And I haven't yet again. So as you said, we're teachers. Yes. Well, do you remember, I don't know if you remember the show Head of the Class? Yes. Yes. My favorite line from Billy Connolly is he fakes a heart attack to go to the emergency room. And he said, and they say to him, "Sir, you can't come in here. This is a place for people with no visible means of support." And he says, "I'm a teacher. I have no visible means of support." And I always remember that. That was, I mean, he was only on, I think, for a season or two at the end when Howard Hessman left, but that was a brilliant line for that. So yeah, the program guides, I like I said, search Amazon. You might get lucky with this one for $20. And that's just something else. And of course, we go to June of 1981 and we get Doctor Who and the Sea Devils from 1981 here. And Malcolm Hulke with the cover by John Geary and the illustrations by Ellen Willow. Now, I told you that they used the original Target plates, but we got really lazy with this one. It looks like they just pasted it on there. I mean, with the blue and this is the Target book without the Target logo. Just slap it on there. Wow. That's how it looks. And I'm trying to think. I don't have any other books that look like that. It was just this one. And it's crazy. This is the last hardcover to use the Lodge logo or the Diamond logo. The ones after this will all be the neon logo. This book was in the U.S. distribution at a cover price of $15. This is my copy from that time. It is in crisp condition. It hasn't been opened. So it's a beautiful copy of this book. The writer's strike, again, happened there. They published hardcovers that were already published in paperback. And this book now goes for about $125. So not very expensive in the relationship to hardcover books. And you can find a lot of these in new condition because of U.S. distribution. So what was the rating on Sea Devils, Tony? That was episode 61. Dalton gave it a 3.75. Allison gave it another 2.5. She said, however, it's 2.5 happy stars. She was actually pleased with it. But she also had a problem with the ending in this one, and I gave it a 3.75. Yeah, again, he doesn't quite stick the landing, but the rest of it is a really gorgeous book. Oh, good. Yeah, it's also one of my favorite TV stories and one of the most iconic uses of the sonic screwdriver ever used in a program. And I was enlightened when I did. I recorded Brian Wiga's presentation at Chicago TARDIS on the sonic screwdriver. He did a really detailed history of the prop. and basically showing John Pertwee holding a tire gauge or whatever it was. And he said that actually it was part of the sonic screwdriver was part of a microphone used in the Jerry Anderson and part of another piece that they used somewhere else, and they melded the two together.
Wow.
And the thing was always breaking, and they were always gluing it back together because the bottom line was the BBC was cheap and they only had one.
Of course.
So I've noticed that from in talking with Peter Purvis at the same time. He said, "Yep, we only had one." So there was no backup. So it's definitely just it's eye-opening when I do these interviews, and I learned so much about props, and I learned a lot about the first Doctor, and it was really exciting. And this next book surprised me because I had never opened this book until tonight, and I discovered something incredibly amazing that I don't think the guy that sold it to me knew he had. So in July of 1981, we get Doctor Who and the Cybermen by Jerry Davis with the cover by Bill Donahue with the original illustrations by Ellen Willow. 3,000 copies were printed, and Bundles from Britain had this copy in abundance in 1985 for $15. Every copy sold out at TARDIS 22. You can expect to pay about $185 for this book. In fact, Alien Entertainment at DoctorWhoStar.com has a new copy of this for $185. This is the first hardcover to use the Sutton logo, or the neon logo as we like to call it, and it will remain this way until late 1987. Now, the surprise that I got is when I opened it up for the first time today. Usually when I opened the book, it actually went to the title page, but there's a page that's stuck over here, and I pulled it back, and it is autographed by Michael Craze.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
So I had to look at the autograph, and it said Ben in quotes here, and I'm looking, that's Michael Craze.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing about it is that it's actually Larry right here. So I can't claim I got it, but this is even better.
Like it was meant to be.
It was meant to be, but like I said, every time I open the book, it sticks a little. So I went back. I'm like, whoa. So when I repackage this, I've got some acid-free paper I'm going to stick in the front there to preserve that. But, because unfortunately Michael Craze is no longer with us. But that was a shock to me. That actually, I did not pay very much for this book, but I think the author also, the person who sold it also had that same issue where he opened the book and it didn't go to that page and didn't notice that there was anything in there, because there's no other marks in this book. I mean, it's not a library book. I have no library marks in it. It's just a well-read copy. So it's just a beautiful book with Ben's autograph on it, which is pretty cool. Again, this is an older book for you. This goes back way back, although we go further back in a few books here.
Yes.
So what happened with Doctor and the Cybermen, or the Moon Base, which is the televised title?
That was episode 32. And Danny was on the podcast for that particular episode. He gave it the lowest score, which was 2. And both Dalton and I gave it a 2.5 because, to be honest, when Jerry Davis is bad, he is really, really bad.
Really bad.
This is not Tomb of the Cybermen. This is simply the Cybermen. And one of the problems that Danny specifically said with it is it doesn't have the Doctor and Company in it, really. It's much more about the Moon Base and about the Cybermen. And the Doctor and Company really don't play much of a role in the book version. I think that's probably the biggest difference between the televised version and the book version, but it's also kind of a middling story on screen as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I finally got to watch the entire thing with the animated inserts, and it helped me a little bit because I've seen the episode 2 and 4 for many years, back when I saw the flickering camera copy in the 80s. Back to Lost in Time, when it was a little clearer, and it was very. In fact, the later edition, I could understand the Cybermen a little bit better because the old copy had a real bad audio. So the Cybermen would talk, and it'd be like, no idea what you're saying. I got nothing. But I am surprised too, because the artwork does depict Moon Base Cybermen.
Yeah.
And for a while, in fact, the previous Achilleos cover uses a Revenge of the Cybermen on the cover because they had a policy of not confusing the readers. So this was
and yet they titled this the Cybermen, making you think it, as I did when I first read this book way back in the 80s, that it was the first Cyberman story.
Right,
so I could not understand how it was that Polly knew who the Cybermen were.
Yeah, it's that was always a head scratcher for me too, because I thought, why not call it Doctor Who and the Moon Base? But they had to have the Cybermen in the title to sell the book. But the 10th Planet doesn't have Cybermen in the title.
Right.
So again, it's you get to editors and management and all kinds of things happen.
I have two theories about that.
Okay.
The first one is that if they had called it Doctor Who and the Moon Base, what's the actual publication date on that book?
The publication date is July 81.
81. Okay. So that's probably not going to be, that probably knocks out one of my theories, which is there may have been some confusion with Space 1999 because there was a moon base in that show.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And the other thing is that the 10th Planet, even though you're right, it's not renamed, it does have the original Cybermen on the cover. And it also says first appearance of the Cybermen on the bottom.
Yes.
So probably so you don't get confused with this book.
Right. And of course, Revenge of the Cybermen came out long before this copy came out. So who knows? Who knows? But like I said, I'm happy for a bonus here that I got Michael Craze's autograph in this book.
Oh, yeah.
So that was pretty cool. All right. Next, we get a very interesting book. It happens to be one of my favorite stories of all time. We get Doctor Who and the Day of the Daleks by Terrence Dix with the cover by Andrew Skilleter. Wonderful cover. No illustrations. This is one of the few books that they got a new cover. They had the plates ready to go. They actually got the plates of the sixth printing of the Target book, which finally corrected the typos. So the typo does not appear in this hardcover. 3,000 copies were printing, and this book uses a new typesetting, completely new typesetting method. So this book was part of the distribution in USA. It sold for $15. The original painting is still in the possession of Andrew Skilleter, and you can get prints of this cover at andrewskilleter.com. For some incredibly strange reason, this book is extremely hard to find and has gone for $750 or more.
Oh my goodness.
In some auctions, both library and ex-library. This copy is the copy I've had since 1985 because it was Day of the Daleks is one of my favorite stories. I said, I'm taking this.
Yes.
I'm taking this. If you want me to put $15 in the till, he's like, no, take it. So I took the book, and I'm glad I did because, in about 10 years or so, this could be part of my retirement package right here. But I have some good news for listeners here because Alien Entertainment still has some copies of the original bundles from Britain, and they're selling for $475. Now, I talked to Gene about that, and he said, yeah, I saw those for $750. And I said, are they out of their mind? So he said he wasn't going to match that. And he's usually pretty, if there's somebody out there selling something that he has for a lot more, he won't even sell his. Like right now, there's a Chicago TARDIS poster that somebody's promoting out there, signed by everybody, that they're asking $4,000 for.
Oh my God. Gene's
got 30 of them in the store, and he can't sell one. He says, I won't sell any of them because if I do, that's just going to propagate that whole thing. Right. And so he's very much against price gouging like I am. And he's shut down a lot of operations too. I think I may have shared this story before, but there was a woman that came into the shop with another signed photo from TARDIS 21 that had John Pertwee's signature on it. And he goes, oh yeah, I remember these. And she, he made an offer to her. And then she said, oh, I've got 30 more. And he goes, well, wait a minute. You didn't tell me that. That changes everything. And I guess she was going around to different shops all over Chicago and Indiana trying to hawk these posters. And I remember the story when John was signing these posters, Norman Rubinstein, who is the CEO of Spirit of Light, somebody in his circle kept sliding additional posters into the pile when John wasn't looking. And famously, John said at the end, I know for a fact I didn't sign 3,000 of those,
Mhm.
and he couldn't prove it, but that's why you'll see people like Fraser Hines with a clicker.
Mhm.
So he can keep track of all the autographs, because John was like, you better make sure you keep track of it or they'll rip you off. But it's an interesting story with this book. Of course, my favorite story of all time, of course, when I was a young kid, I had a huge crush on Anna Berry, who was one of the gorillas, and I got her autograph. I think I know if I don't tell. Did I tell you that story, Tony?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a great story. I ran into her at a different event, and I saw her, and I said, "Are you the same Anna Berry?" And so she got the photo out of her stuff and signed it for me. It was her holding the gun to John Pertwee. It was really quite cool. And of course, going back to this episode to rate this story, I was on this podcast.
You were. See, I was going to make a joke about some random person named Larry being on the episode. It was episode 59. You joined us for that one.
Yes.
You and I both gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Dalton gave it a 4, and Allison gave it a 2.5 and immediately ducked away from your chair.
I remember that she scooted away.
She did.
Out of arm's reach. And that was my first appearance on the Target Book Club.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very proud to be there. We all sat in your living room and enjoyed
back when we could.
When we could do that, right? It was pre-pandemic. And I remember I just for effect, I brought all this stuff for Day of the Daleks on it, because that's my big thing is I look for Day of the Daleks things. Of course, my print that I got from Chris Achilleos, it's on my wall here, and it says, "To Larry and the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, your friend Chris." I looked up and I found out that he did that exactly 1 month before he passed away. And I'm just, I was just like, man, I was devastated. But we're going to get some interesting, just a little teaser for down the road here. I think a couple episodes down the road, I'm going to be talking with Tasha Achilleos.
Right.
So I've got the big question will be answered. Will the shop open up again? Right now, the website is up, but it says closed for maintenance. That's a good sign, because it was completely gone after he passed away. It actually went to domain for sale. The domain is back in her hands, and we'll see what's going on with that, and whether or not his artwork will see the light of day again. And she's a very interesting person. And I think my listeners will get a great, you'll get closer to not only her, but to Chris as well, since we were unable to speak with Chris. He was scheduled for the February interview in 2022, but he passed away in December of 2021. So really sad there. So that's Day of the Daleks. We go now to September of 1981, and we get Doctor Who and the State of Decay by Terrence Dix, with the cover also by Andrew Skilleter. 3,000 were printed and included in the Bundles from Britain catalog for $14. By this month, the writer's strike was settled. So this was a new title that came out along with the Target book. Prints of the cover are still available at andrewskilleter.com. And this book is available from DoctorWhoStore.com for $185 in new condition. This was a pretty recent episode for you. So
Yep.
I listened to it when it came out. But tell us about what the club thought of this book.
Episode 124. We weren't terribly impressed with this one. Dalton gave it a 2.5. He usually gives higher than that. Allison gave it a 1.5, which is low even for her. And I gave it a 2. It's Terrence Dix, generally, when he does his own scripts, does a really good job on them. Robot is readable much more than it is watchable.
Yeah.
And Horror Fang Rock is an amazing book. This isn't, which is really unfortunate, given that Horror Fang Rock was written as a replacement for this story when they couldn't air it at the time that they were going to. They couldn't produce it because the BBC was doing a production of Dracula that year, and they thought it would take away from the seriousness. Of course, anyone who's seen that production by the BBC of Dracula knows that they needn't have worried. So,
right.
Yeah, not a great book, unfortunately.
That's a shame. I know it, because I actually enjoyed the TV story quite a bit. It was one of those with Time Lord lore coming into the play. But I also know that Tom Baker was also at this point phoning in his performance a bit. So it wasn't as good as it could have been. If Tom Baker had known he was going to be the Doctor for 5 more years, could have been a different story entirely. So there you go. State of Decay. I love this blue. The blue cover seems to be a popular thing. I'm going to bring back the Day of the Daleks. You'll see that's the exact same color that they did for that. So that was interesting. The next book, we go to October 1980, and this has an interesting story to it. But we are now at Doctor Who and an Unearthly Child, and I just have the first edition Target book to hold up since the hardcover, not very easy to find. Terrence Dicks. The cover is by Andrew Skilleter. 2,500 copies were printed and not included in the U.S. distribution. And the reason for that is they entirely sold out in England. This was the most popular release for the WHL line. In fact, this went to reprint very quickly. The first print of the Target, by the way, you can tell because if I move the book here, it's got the changing color logo. It's got that embossed logo on the front here. You can kind of feel that. The second edition, they didn't do that. And of course, it says here the first publication of the very first Doctor Who story also says that on the hardcover. This book was published to coincide directly with the 5 Faces of Doctor Who at the strong behest of John Nathan Turner. This was Andrew Skilleter's fastest commission and turnaround to date. The book had a deadline of 2 weeks before the repeat. So permission had been obtained from Anthony Coburn's widow to go forward. The TARDIS in the artwork is actually from Mask of Mandragora, which is why it's not the correct TARDIS from An Unearthly Child. So many people have noted, wait a minute, that's not the right TARDIS. No, you're right. The rest of the junkyard is pretty accurate. He had seen black and white photos of the junkyard and tried to include elements of that junkyard, including the staircase in the back here and things like that. So he tried to make it look like it was in the junkyard. If you, the hardcover, of course, does not have the embossed logo, unfortunately. The book can go right now. I'm going to guess here that it's going to go for at least $1,000 or more. And the reason I kind of put it there is about 3 months ago, somebody did approach me on one of the social media sites, I can't remember, and had a copy of this in hardcover, and it looked like it had been torn apart by tigers. It was in horrible condition. I mean, the cover was falling off. It was really bent over, and he wanted $400 for it. And I said, I'm really sorry. I'm kind of, the longer, and this is my 42nd year in Doctor Who collecting, and I always, I sometimes, have you ever watched Pawn Stars? Yeah, I always think of the guy that runs that shop. He has walked away from some really amazing things because the price just didn't work.
Right. And
I take his lead on a lot of things where if it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it. And it's, and I weigh things out very carefully. I negotiate. In fact, I scored a big one today, as a matter of fact, which I'll mention at the end of the show, because I was really excited to get a hold of this other thing. And if you've been on Facebook or social media, you notice I got a Dalek baby plate recently. And that was a big find. It was a private sale. I can't even disclose what I paid for it, and I didn't pay much for it. So I don't want to mess up somebody else's sale. So it was a great find, and I love the thing. It's just amazing how Weatherby and Sons. It's in mint condition. There's not a chip on it. It's beautiful. But anyway, back to this. It's basically its collectible value has a lot to do with the lack of U.S. distribution and the fact that many of the copies, a majority of the copies that you'll find, will be in tattered shape or ex-library severely, red shape. I have not seen, in fact, many of the people I associate with who have big hardcover collections have a copy of this, but it's not anywhere near the condition they want. And it's just very hard to find. If you did buy one new, you're holding on to it, or you've forgotten you've got it, and it's just not showing up anywhere. Now, to the Target Book Club, this would be episode 1, isn't it?
Yes, our very first episode, all the way back when we had Danny and Sheena on the program.
Yes.
Danny gave it a 4. Sheena gave it the first of her very odd scores. It was a 3.8.
Okay.
And I gave it a 3.5 because it's not a bad book at all. It's not Terrence Dix at his best. He certainly had as quick a turnaround time as Andrew Skilleter did, but it's still good. It's still good, and it captures the spirit of the episode a lot better than the very first Target book that was ever published.
Yes,
But,
that's true.
but yeah, it was not a bad book at all.
Well, that's good. And I know just from my own research into that whole anniversary era and the Five Faces of Doctor Who was a huge event because the BBC doesn't repeat anything.
Right.
And showing An Unearthly Child to a new audience, it got a lot of attention. It had high ratings, and it just a really amazing moment. And of course, when we saw it here, I saw it here in the United States at a convention, and the room, you could not get a chair. It was full for the big screen version of An Unearthly Child. And we just watched it with just glued eyes on the screen. And then afterwards, we got to listen to Carol Ann Ford do a Q&A. So that was really exciting. She was the only Hartnell era guest, by the way, at the Spirit of Light show. So just a really incredible book. And by the way, finding a first edition Target copy in mint condition, very hard to find as well. I noted just the fact that this is an unread copy of a first edition. I've had it for years, but I didn't even think about that when I looked into the hardcover editions. I checked the paperback prices, and a new copy of this is going for $40. So, and the original price on this, and it does not have a U.S. price on it, which is interesting, but it would have been £1.25 back in '81 for that, but only 30 cents in Malta. So, and now, of course, we get to the final book of the year, because in December there were no books. Not sure why, but in November of 1981, we get an interesting. It's a reprint, but not a reprint. I'm not sure what to call it, but we get Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion, but we get this cover here, which I'm not a fan of the cover myself, but it's an Andrew Skilleter cover. So it's a well-drawn octopus, even though I'm not sure why we had to be subjected to that. And all of the illustrations are still in here from the late Chris Achilleos. Now, I pulled this out just for reference here. The first hardcover, of course, was Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion. Beautiful Chris Achilleos cover. Notice just from side by side, it's a bigger book.
Yes.
It's just a larger book. And I think the artwork is 10 times better than this copy. Now, what's interesting is that the inside of this book doesn't say second edition. It says, and I'll read it exactly here. It says, first published by Allen Wingate Publishers, this edition, 1981.
Mm-hmm.
And this book may not be reproduced by any means without permission. So it was newly typesetted. So, but they kept all the illustrations, because there are some beautiful illustrations in here. Let me just get one up here from these illustrations by Chris Achilleos are just amazing.
Oh yeah.
And they're really quite good. And the story, it's a story I really like too. Spearhead from Space is one of my favorites. We're not going to have a review of this one because we did it already way back in our first episode. So this is the same book essentially. However, this book, of course, page won't move, everybody. That sometimes happens on the podcast. So you got two great artists in one book here. You get the Andrew Skilleter cover with the Chris Achilleos inside. So it's like, it's getting like a really good French baguette with Wagyu beef on it. There you go. You're a $500 hamburger.
Right.
I'm not even sure why it's that expensive, but that's okay. Anyway, so you get that. 3,000 copies were printed on this, and there's not much else about this reprint, but it's hard to find. We had about 10 copies of these in 1985 that we sold for $15. They all flew off the shelf very quickly. I have seen copies for $700 or more. There is a copy sitting on Abe Books of an ex-library copy of this book for $1,300. Not sure why. But I will report this is a mint condition copy of this reprint. So I'm not sure when I got it. It may be the bundles copy. I don't know if I was allowed to take one, but I have one. So it does not have sticker on it, so I have no idea. And of course, this, that basically does it for the hardcovers. If you want to find out the review of this book, by the way, you've got two options. You can look back at our previous episode for 1974-75, or you can find the Target Book Club episode for the Auton Invasion. So there you go. That takes care of the 1981 hardcover books. If you want to own a set of these, good luck. Because I don't have a complete set of these. I finally got 80 completed. That's the only year I have completed, except for 74. They only did $2. I'm not very confident of finding a copy of Unearthly Child. I've always kept an optimistic look of, you never know what's going to happen, because I'll tell you what I picked up in a moment that I never thought I was going to get a hold of, but I did. And this particular book, I'm not having the same thing. So I made an estimated price of Unearthly Child at about $1,000. So if you want to own a set of these books, the estimated cost is $3,735 for those 11 books. So there you go. My advice, of course, to all collectors out there is negotiate whenever possible. Beware of high-priced starting auctions. Try to look for buy it nows if you can, and put it on your watch list. And a day later, you might get an offer that is pretty reasonable. You might get lucky. Watch the Facebook Target book groups. Respected sellers like Dale Santos or David Russell or Jonathan Ruffle. You can find some great deals out there. Of course, my special thanks to my guest here, Tony Whitt. And of course, tell all our listeners where they can find the wonderful Target Book Club podcast.
You can find it at soundcloud.com/Doctor Who Target BC, all one word, no spaces.
Oh, very good. Now, earlier tonight, actually, I got a private sale. It is a copy of the Radio Times from 1967 with the Tomb of the Cybermen on the front cover.
Oh, awesome.
And I'd only seen pictures of it, but I'm getting the actual magazine.
Oh, that's great.
So that was kind of like the baby plate. It kind of just landed on me. and I was like, yes, please. I'll take that. I have a pretty good set of Radio Times. I need to do an episode on Radio Times again. My earliest one doesn't have a Doctor Who cover, but it has in the listings The Survivors, which is the first appearance of the Daleks.
Right.
So that would be after that aired, that's when people went crazy, and that the marketing went out and million viewers and Doctor Who was saved. So so it's always exciting when I, and of course, at the beginning of this podcast, in my intro, I always list all the latest acquisitions to the collection, but I'll add this one late since it just happened as I was recording. And our future episode will continue with classic hardcovers with Tony Whitt in 1982, but you're going to have to wait a little while ago because one of the books they haven't covered yet. So we have to wait till they review the book, and then we'll put this plan together here. Only a few of the 82 books were included in U.S. distribution, and you get a hefty price increase to £5.25. Many of those titles are very hard to find, and no surprise, I do not have a full set of books from 1982. Follow us on Instagram if you want to see all the full color art of these hardcovers. And you can watch this episode on Patreon with a $15 or more subscription. If you have any photos or proof of life of books that we show here today in better shape, please email them to drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com with hardcover photos in the subject line so we don't ignore it. All Andrew Skilleter prints are for sale at andrewskilleter.com. He is a listener, so I try to give him a plug whenever possible. Watch this space, of course, for information on the Chris Achilleos prints availability, because in a couple episodes, I will be talking with the very wonderful Tasha Achilleos. So there we go. Thanks once again, Tony, for being here, my friend.
And thank you for having me.
You bet. Thanks again. And my listeners, please stay tuned for the most outrageous offer.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Allison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to
The Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
The Vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. That's it's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
You know he needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
All my travellings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. This is an offer that appears to be way too high for a Doctor Who collectible or a Doctor Who related item that appears to be thousands of % higher than the actual going price. And so we look into it and we find out that the link is actually real and the price is actually listed, and then we look around to see if we can find it for less. And we were successful on today's offering. So it looks like we have an offer here. The bookstore is the Welcome Back Books from Toledo, Ohio. They've been online since 2018 with a seller rating of 4 out of 5 stars, so not a perfect rating. And they say that this book is clean and crisp and new, which is great. The book in question here is Doctor Who: The Ruby's Curse by Alex Kingston. A real nice book. Very, one of those it's a Doctor Who BBC release. So there we go. They're asking here, it says new condition. It was a 2021 release, so it's only a year old. They are asking for $936.08. Okay, the first red flag here is the 8 cents on the end. Why is it $936.08? This has not been converted into any other foreign currency, so I'm guessing this is not a real bookstore. I didn't Google them or anything. Maybe they are a real bookstore. I don't want to, call them out. I did not do my research there. I was just looking for the item. But it seems to be just one of those things where this is possibly a robot store where they don't actually have the book. They're hoping you'll pay the price and then they'll buy it cheaper. But here's the good news. You can bypass this whole thing, because definitely don't pay $936 for this book, because I found it in several other places where you can get it brand new for a lot cheaper. First of all, you can get it from Amazon.com. Hardcover edition, $18.74. You can also get the Kindle edition for $9.99 if you just want to read it. But there you go. I also found a copy on eBay, brand new, $14.08. And it looks like free shipping. So there you go. That might be the way to go there. Grand Eagle Retail with a 98.7 positive feedback for Doctor Who, The Ruby's Curse. So there is no reason to pay $900 for a book that you can get for under $15. You know, that's why I do this segment. This is what gets me a little hot under the collar sometimes, is there are people out there that want to take advantage of Doctor Who fans. And some of the people that sell these books are not Doctor Who fans. They don't really have that, passion for the show, but they do want to make money. And that's one of the things I hear from retailers, such as the folks at Alien Entertainment or the Who North America that have been in business since before the new Who series. Like, we're talking way back in the 80s when they opened up. Bundles from Britain was in 84, which later led to other stores and then became, Alien Entertainment later. But the Who shop, of course, opened up the same year in 84. They've been through it since Doctor Who was canceled in 89 all the way through, and you won't find these kinds of crazy prices at those shops because that's not how they stay in business. So please, if you have a question about anything, you can, if you find something and you're not sure it's the right price or you think it's too much, give us an email at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com, and I will work with you. I'll see what I can find out. It's, obviously, time considering and all that. If it's a time crunch thing in we can discuss that via email, or you can find us on Facebook, of course, at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, or Instagram, or Twitter, or LinkedIn for that matter. We're all out there. So if you need to talk about something, if you want to get something and you're not sure the price is right, let me know, and I'm more than happy to do that. So the Ruby's Curse, my estimation here is it will not sell at that $936 price. And there you have it. And that wraps up the 60th episode of the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I want to thank my guest today, Professor Tony Whitt, talking about those hardcover books. We had some interesting stories there. And we were just really happy to present today's episode. It was very exciting for me. Coming up in our next episode, we'll be talking with author John Walsh on his new book, Doctor Who and the Daleks, The Official Guide to the Film. So that's already happened. So we'll get that in the next episode in about 2 weeks or so. And, like I said, the new series is exciting this year. A lot of things happening for the 60th anniversary. So keep up the celebrations. And most of all, keep collecting. Until next time.
A Doctor Who Podcast Network.